Fufang, the Infinigan biohacker, had set up shop on the Immerwald orbital station. After the evacuation of the surface, his work release orders had slipped through the cracks. Here on the edge of the known systems, the Clouder forgot about him. The orbital, still viable life space proved a refuge for a smaller cluster of SFP, grazers, and Craddock farmers. They, along with a Veritas AI clone, managed the system's development and kept monitor of the now Kali-owned world. Fufang's talents proved quite profitable here. The preservers had all left, back to the Clouder Core, leaving him the lone holder of the genetic manipulation skill set. Fufang crawled through the low-gravity corridor, holding the glass vial in his lower hands. He reached the main ovoid room, and the starfish people clusters gathered together, touching hands. He floated in and bowed his head. The SFP individuals bowed in turn and waved him to come in. "Hello, starfish people. I have finished your order. It will need grow-tested in a quarantined farm." The SFP issued an utterance. "Agreed, thank you. We do not want a repeat of your Russell cat." Fufang tilted his head. "Yeah, I'm not being careless. I looked over the code. It should be a good cross. Highlight conversion and nutrient-rich and with multiple fruiting cycles before plant death." "Good. Good. We will test. Sending you payment. Half now. Rest after trials." "Thank you." Fufang felt the ping on his arm data slate. He looked and saw the funds deposited. He looked back up. "If you have any questions, call me. I'll do what I can to fix anything that comes up. I need to go talk to a Webbian now if you don't need anything." The SFP around the room waved him out. "We will plant. We will test. Go. Pay your rent." Fufang bobbed his ears, bowing again, and departed back down the low-grav halls. Fufang waited in the outer office for over an hour before he was let in to see Gwellar, his Webbian landlord and the orbital banker. He adjusted his breather and stepped out of the airlock into the thick, red acidic atmosphere of the office. "Greetings again, Gwellar. I have the owed rent." The Webbian stretched out across the far wall, soaking in the sunlight coming through the reinforced window. Its numerous eyes pivoted in its webbing, looking at the Infinigan. "I am glad to hear the job is working out, Fufang. I was worried you'd be a failure." Fufang tilted his head. "So far, my code is holding up, but they aren't even planted yet. I might still fail." "You only fail if you quit. The SFP said you are to remain on station to help if any malformance happens." "Yes, I agreed to that." "Good," Gwellar said, turning his gaze back out toward the warmth of the star. Good, I do not like failures. I want you to succeed, young one. Life grows out of success. Your success will help all here have success. Your growth will help us all grow. Do you understand?" "Yes, life space grows life space. I get it." The Webbian flexed and flung its body across a stretch of space, monkey barring across the room, stopping to hang directly in front of the Infinigan. "Failure is right out the window, young one. Death, cold, suffocation. You know this?" Fufang bobbed his ears slowly. "I know this. You are stubborn. I can see it all over you. You are poor worker. I see it all over you. You are a quitter. I know it." Fufang tilted his head and bared his teeth. "I paid you. Yes, you paid me. But is your work good enough that you will be paid again? Will you be worthy of more jobs? Will your projects kill the SFP? Do you even know?" Gwellar swung back and forth, stretching and coalescing. "We're stuck with you. I hope you succeed. I say the truth, I do. I'll succeed. You'll got your rent." He turned toward the door and waved the Webbian off. "He'll see you in 50 cycles, money in hand." Fufang snarled and shut the door. "I'm not a quitter," he mumbled to himself. It was several cycles later, and Fufang was eating from his stockpile of Ribian fruit while coding out a project into his scavenged sequencer. His data slate, laying on a nearby pile of parts, was buzzing. He reached over with his upper left hand and pulled it over. He hit the answer button, and a human's face appeared in holographic form floating over it. "Hello. Is this Fufeng? The human male asked. Fufeng offered a human nod. I am. Who are you? I am Stuart, down on Immerwald. You busy? Fufeng's lips shrunk down to a point. You're down there? You are on the surface. The human nodded. I am. Are you Callie? Fufeng asked. Stuart shook his head. No, thankfully, well, not yet. I don't want to be really, that's kind of why I'm calling you. Callie wants you to call me. Is she forcing you? She's in your skin. Stuart again shook his head. No, we have a deal going on, and I was looking through the data logs recovered from the Habitus site. My cohort and I have a good dig going here, and Callie is going to let us keep it, but we have a situation. Situation? Yes, Stuart said. We're low on food, and this planet has a lot of low-level poisons in its biosphere. We need some viable cultivars if we hope to not starve. Fufeng bobbed his ears. You saw my record? Found me on the orbital logs then, huh? Stuart nodded. Correct. Our deal with Callie only covers our habitation. She doesn't really care about our food situation. That doesn't seem beneficial. How can you have a deal if you die? The Infinigan asked. Exactly. Right? Well, she's on a one-track mind, really. So we're having to explore alternative routes. You willing to help us? Maybe send down a care package we can recover? It wouldn't take a lot. A small seed library is all we need to get a farm going. Fufeng tilted his head for a moment, bobbing his ears slightly. What do I get out of it? Stuart looked deadpan right at him through the hologram. Stella and I are stuck down here for the foreseeable future. I've got a few thousand clams that I have no need for. They're yours upon retrieval. Fufeng bobbed his ears harder now. Deal. I'll get a farm pack going for you. Send your coordinates, and I'll have it to you within the cycle. Deal? Stuart nodded. Deal. Thank you, Fufeng. Welcome, human. Fufeng then hit the button to terminate the call. Yay. Just in time. He patted his abdomen above his stomach organs. Could use some fresh meat meals. Fufeng was touching through the SFP seed vault when the SFP in the room turned to look at him. Each stared with their 5 eyes. They spoke in turns. Fufeng, the crop test has failed. Crop is multiplying without seeds. It is spreading on walls, growing on skin. We need you to remedy. Fufeng stopped looking through the crop seeds and looked at the SFP. All right, take me to the farm, I guess. The SFP bowed and led him to the quarantine farm. He stopped at the airlock and put on the designated Infinigan suit. He strapped in and sealed the suit, activating the internal air systems. He stepped into the farm. Fufeng looked around. The walls were covered in sprouting vines, as was the ceiling and the soil-covered floor. The lights, now covered, gave off a dim green glow. Large, ripe strawberries hung sporadically in the foliage. He walked over and plucked one of the fruits. A puff of brown dust sprayed out from the seed holes as he pinched it. He turned and looked at a nearby SFP in the room. Its skin was covered in small vines and leaves. He could see the roots boring into the sapient's flesh. Spores. I crossed the plant with a moss to aid in its nutrient accumulation. Guess it worked too well. Sorry. Feces. This is a good output, just too aggressive, I guess. He knelt down and looked at the vines. Super healthy. Strong. No discoloration. The SFP in the room gathered together around him, touching hands. You have doomed this cluster. 3 have already suffocated on vines growing in their airways. The strain cannot be allowed. You will be quarantined to your lab room until this is fixed. Fufeng tilted his head sharply. No. You wanted a fruitful strain. This is hyperfruiting. You got what you ordered. It is not usable. It is lethal. We will not pay for non-usable. Fufeng hopped a bit. No, you owe me. I need that for rent. No money, no rent, no lab, no fixed crop. You get it? The SFP stared at him. You have killed this cluster. You are negligent. The section may have to be jettisoned. Fufang tilted his head back and forth. No. Just turn off the lights. It is chlorphoric. It needs light to grow. Turn off the lights and it will quit growing. The lights flicked off abruptly. Fufang bobbed his ears in the dark. Keep your cluster here in the dark. Sterilize this entire farm. Maybe expose it to vacuum. Scrub it down. That should get rid of it. I'll work on a less aggressive strain. You will have to if you expect to be paid. You have cost us lives and time. Failure. The SFP said, standing in the dark. Fufang went back into the airlock and started the sterilization protocols. Fufang spent 2 cycles barricaded in his room, coding and sequencing. His comm rang several times. The human was from the world down below was trying to reach him for the seed pack. He didn't answer. He didn't have time. He coded and printed out several vials of seeds, along with several vials containing eggs. He then spun around and spent several hours coding on his data slate. Eventually, his project reached completion. He activated the computer code, sending out a viral code targeting specific cameras along his plotted course. He had gotten the idea from one of his favorite human historical films about long-extinct resurrected species. He watched as the cameras ticked off. He didn't have long before the AI realized the cause and corrected it. The door clicked open. He gathered his data slate and vials, putting them into a backpack. He then unplugged his sequencer and shredder and stuffed them into the pack. Fufang opened the door and snuck out. The lights had gone out, but his eyes were still able to pick up refracted light bouncing through the corridor. The cameras were still off, and he made it down several halls easily. A light clicked on far behind him. Human feces and reproduction methods. Veritas is onto me. He started pulling himself faster through the corridors. He was breathing hard, pulling gasps through his mask. He turned up the flow to aid in his quick movements. He turned the last corner, reaching an escape pod. It was still deactivated. He looked down the hall behind him and saw another light click on. His hand slipped as he forced them to work faster than he could process, manually opening the door. He darted in as soon as he could fit and slid into the seat. The terminal was offline, unpowered. He spun the manual door catch shut, sealing himself in, and waited. He watched as a light turned on, then another closer one, then the one outside the pod. Then the pod started powering up. Without hesitation, he struck the launch button, jettisoning him down toward the planet below. He felt the thrusters push him free of the station and into the gravity well. Fire arched across the windows outside. He forced himself to see the terminal. The trajectory was sound. He was heading toward the target coordinates. Fufang stood atop an outcropping, sucking in air through his breather. It was fresher, the staleness of the station gone. He looked down at the valley below. Plants were growing, and he knew Callie was growing there too. He turned his eyes up toward the mountain peak, noting the 3 steam stacks. He looked around and saw there were traces of soot around, but snow had been slowly covering it. He started hiking up. 2 humanoid figures in suits greeted him at the next rise. The male held up its right hand. "Hello, Fufang. I did not expect to meet you in person, let alone without a biosuit." Fufang knelt down on a rock, setting his pack down. "I did not either. Circumstances changed and I was forced to come." The female spoke up. "We heard. You pissed off a lot of people, it seems." Fufang stared back and forth at the two. "Are you two urinating at me as well?" Stella shook her head. "Not at all. We're actually hoping you brought that new strawberry strain." Fufang tilted his head, staring at her. "It's lethal. You want that?" Stella's smile stretched across her face. "Lethal to softies like the SFP. You used Earth DNA throughout it, didn't you?" Fufang bobbed his ears. "Yes. How did you—" "The Veritas told our Gree," she interrupted. "I think we will be fine with it here." Fufang pointed down toward the valley. "What about contamination? The Callie won't like it." Stewart turned and started walking. "She didn't care what we had to eat. That's on her." He waved him to follow. "Come on, Fufang. We bought your indenturation. You can work off your sentence with us. Fufang looked at Stella, who was still standing near him. She smiled at him. Glad to have you on our crew. She turned and started following the male human. Fufang lifted his pack and stood up. Wait, I mess up things. I don't know if using my strawberries is smart, he shouted. You sure you want me? Stuart laughed through the comm channel. Buddy, you're stranded with us now. You're one fuck up among 4 now, and we're all just one failure away from being part of Cali down there. So, no pressure. Fufang turned and looked down into the valley. He knew some human speech from learning their computer code. He could read the purple letters written with flowers across the mountains below. I am watching you. He turned back, hurrying to catch up to the two. You said you had a deal with Cali? Stella looked down at him. Yeah. She lets us mine up here, build up stores, and grow our gree. Yeah, and what does she get? Stella laughed. We help her figure out a way to get her son back. And where is her son now? With Josiah, right? Stella nodded. Yup, probably. Other side of the clouder by now, I bet. Fufang tilted his head slightly as he walked. How are you going to get him to bring his son back to her? Stella shrugged in her thick metal-layered suit. No idea. Does Callie know that? He asked. Stuart laughed through the comm. She's a goddamn planet. I bet she's figured it out. Fufang looked back down at the purple words in the valley. Then why are we still alive? We don't have anything to offer. Stuart reached up and pressed a button built into the cliff face, and a massive door started opening. He looked over at the Infinigan. Gotta think long-term, buddy. Fufang looked up at Stuart. Long-term? Stuart entered into the dark chamber inside. Stella paused before entering and looked at Fufang again, meeting his eyes. We're old. So is she. We all kind of think alike. You'll get it eventually. Stella stepped into the dark. Fufang followed. Get what? I don't understand, he said as he stepped in. Stuart laughed over the comm. Patience, hope, and time. Those 3 things can make anything happen. Fufang tilted his head. Human feces and procreation. You're all insane. Stella turned on a light on the far side of the hangar as the door shut behind the Infinigan. She waved him over. Welcome to your new home, little buddy. You're among friends now. Fufang walked up the steps toward the door. Stella reached down and lifted the heavy pack off his shoulders. She smiled at him. We're a good kind of crazy, and you're welcome to go nuts. Just give us a heads up if you make anything that moves fast, all right? Fufang shook his head for her. I'm not going to make any cats. She shrugged as she stepped inside. I don't think we'll complain. Meat's meat. Fufang stepped inside and the door slammed shut behind him. He watched as she descended into the base carrying his pack. You're not scared? Stuart, far down the hall, responded. We're adventurers, friend. I'd be impressed if you could scare us. Fufang's ears bobbed. Just give you a warning, right? Stella giggled softly. He's getting it. Yup. Quick learner. Stuart replied. Sam reached across the small coffee table and took a wrapped butterscotch candy. He gently unwrapped it, got up, and walked over to the waste bin and dropped it in. Alexander was sitting on the opposite couch taking notes. He looked up as Sam reached his couch and sat. Sam, you admitted yourself you're still drinking heavily. Sam nodded. Yeah, it helps. Alexander shook his head. No, it puts off. Sam moved the butterscotch around in his mouth. Yeah, it helps put feelings off. I don't want them, so I drink. He smiled. You get that right? Alexander stared blankly at him for a moment. Sam, your feelings don't go away. You just squash them down. You can keep squashing all you want, but they're going to erupt out somewhere else if you do that. The therapist looked over his notes. All right, so you went on your old ship. Tell me about that. Sam looked down at his feet. He gave a dry chuckle, spreading his arms out over the back of the couch. The Infinigan. Those little assholes almost cut that ship apart before I found out they even brought it back. What did that feel like to you? Sam looked around the room. It felt like a goddamn desecration. Sam shook his head. But they don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know. Aliens are different. You can't assume, you know? Alexander nodded. I do know. I have clients of numerous species. Sam raised his finger while looking at his boots. Their fucking senator, even. She knew all about it and was happy to part it out. She wasn't going to tell me, or anyone. They even hid it from orbit. They hid orbit from orbit. You said you did stop them, though. Sam lowered his hand back down to his side and adjusted the candy in his mouth, clacking it on his teeth. Yeah. I got teams in to recover the bodies. Had them transported to Sparrow. Damn, put together a military graveyard there. He's become an asset to you, hasn't he? Alexander pointed out. Sam nodded, looking absently at his hands. Yeah. It's weird sometimes, though. Sam looked up. He's with Shineless, and I get she's a clone, but I had a crush on my captain, and he knows that. It's like he's living out my dream as his. He has your memories correct? Sam scrunched up his face, nodding more. Yeah. So, your dreams are technically his also? Yeah, Sam said. It's still weird. Alexander looked back down at his notes. It is weird, but it's nothing new. Cloning has been around for quite a while. There are numerous studies I could cite on duplicity and co-mind life-sharing. Sam shook his head. Nah, it's not that big a deal. He's been awesome. We get drinks anytime he's station-side. Alexander jotted a note down and then looked up. You considered going to visit him on Sparrow? Maybe going to that graveyard? It could help you relax. Maybe help you come to terms with some of your feelings. Sam shook his head, shifting on the couch. Can't. I gotta help Olivia with little Langdon. I've got this whole station to keep from ripping itself apart. You know, the Scribblers are actually having a feud? Alexander shook his head. I haven't heard of it. Sam nodded. Yeah, the Knights are wanting to split from the legal tribes. The legal ones are suing the Knights over access to my cat. They even had a battle in one of the bathrooms in the mall. Sounds violent. You had to go handle that yourself? Sam stared at him for a moment. No. Security broke it up. They used brooms. Sam laughed. You didn't see it on the news? No. I stay off it as much as possible. I got my own problems to deal with. Alexander smiled, jotting another note down. So, security handled it. But your cat is being contested. Tell me about that. Sam shut his eyes for a moment. Yeah, Miss Mishi. I let her wander a bunch. She's barely my cat anymore. She comes and goes. I make sure to leave food and water outside the door for her. Every now and then I get to pick her up. Your family growing up have cats? Alexander asked. Sam shook his head. No, we were dog people. Fano Labradors. Alexander's eyes widened. Oh, the smart ones. Sam nodded. Yeah, bred with that Foxby2 in them. Very good with commands, loving. My mom raised them for police forces and therapy programs. Do you have good memories about them? Yeah. It was neat. She had me help her. We would all have a dog on a lead, and she would give commands, and each dog would help learn from the others. And by the end of the day, you'd have a whole set of dogs trained at once, just like kids. They were really smart dogs. Alexander took another note down. He looked back up at Sam. That takes me to my next topic I wanted to address. When you ran in to fix the Infinigan habitat, you know when you got your lungs replaced. You almost died in that, right? Sam laughed. I was running on again, wasn't I? Alexander nodded. Olivia chews me out when I do that. She gets freaked out. Think it might also remind her of you almost dying? Sam slowly nodded. Yeah, she was pretty pissed about that. Alexander sat down his notepad. Sam, I'm going to be honest. You are severely depressed, maybe even PTSD. You have to relax, take a break, Go somewhere, do something. You've gone through more since you've arrived here than most do in entire lifetimes. Sam reached over and grabbed another candy from the bowl on the table. You're right. I got a family now. He looked up at his therapist as he leaned back into the couch, unwrapping the butterscotch. Thing is, this place, I kinda love it. Every morning I wake up to a list of things that I have to fix. I'm trying to delegate, I'm trying to get people on board and taking up the slack, but every morning I still have a list of things needing done. Alex stared at him quietly for a moment. Sam, you're burning out, he said quietly. You keep on like you are and you're going to end up dead. Little Langdon is going to end up fatherless. You want that? Sam clacked the fresh candy around his mouth. No, I don't want that. I hear you, loud and clear. I'll work on delegating even more, I guess. Alexander smiled. Good. You need a break. He then lifted up his notepad and pointed. I did have an idea during our discussion. I remember seeing a black cat somewhere on the station. Maybe you could breed Miss Michi? Maybe get you a line of clouder cats going. I'll think on it. We do still have a rabbit rat problem. We could use a few more. Alex stood up. Well, if and when. I'd like one. Sam stood up and started toward the door. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for seeing me again, by the way. Sam, you need to come by every few days. Really. Talk to Missy on your way out. I think every 10 cycles would be a good start. Sam nodded. All right. It did feel good to talk. Alex patted him on the back as he stepped out the door. Take that break, Sam. Will do. Sam took one of the new halls back to his office. He walked through Large Park, still under construction, and looked around at the high walls and cordoned-off holes meant for future trees. He stopped at the peak of a large bridge overlooking a deep canyon, meant to be water-filled and allow ocean growers to move through from habitat to habitat. He continued on past a few empty shops and gave a small wave to the Infinigan, installing the wiring. He exited out the park and entered back onto one of his familiar paths. After a bit, he made it back into his office, over to his desk, and lounged in his chair with a cup of warm coffee in his hand. Hey, Orbit. Hello, Sam, Orbit said, appearing across the desk from him in the open chair. Need help with something? How's you and you getting along? We've been doing a bit of talking, actually. He's still processing his citizenhood. Can I talk to him? He online in the station already? Orbit shook his head. No. We found several lines of corrupt code and we're running a deep scan through his stacks presently. I did have him moved to a clean room, though. The Infinigan rush you out? Orbit nodded. Yes. Quite thankless creatures. Sam took a sip and then set his coffee down on the desk. That they are, but they have helped quite a bit. You want me to run the numbers on how much that help is worth? The AI asked. Sam shook his head. They are what they are, Orbit. And you had money to spare. Sam nodded. I'm thinking it's a virus. Sam looked at him askew. What is? The corrupt code, the catastrophic failure, all of it. I think the Arlong is maybe some sort of space computer virus. Sam pivoted his chair and picked his cup of coffee back up. So this whole station is infected then? You able to cleanse yourself? I was a copy of Safe Save. Backup from the storage vault files. We'll keep running logs and find out, though. Be safe with it. I don't need you going all Hal on me, Sam said. Of course, Sam. Safety first. Orbit leaned over and touched Sam's arm data slate, causing a text to appear. You've neglected your missives today. Sam shrugged. I'm probably going to start missing more and more things. Well, you should take note of those too. Sam scrolled over them and opened up the first. Holy crap. Yeah. He read through the file. The Wobblers. Wow, they sent a detailed schematic of their base. This is pretty informative intel. Sam looked up at Orbit. Pretty trusting of them sending this. Orbit leaned back, nodding, his holographic form unable to move the chair with him. Yup. They legit want to share knowledge with us. Sam finished off the cup and sat up straight. So, the envoy to visit them is on then? Yeah. Did you catch the envoy specifications? Sam looked back through the file. Oh, shit. That limits who we can send. Oh, wow. How do they live in that? From the files they sent about their biology, they have evolved themselves specifically to survive the modified high gravity of living near a singularity. The one in the brig self-modified to come interrogate you, it seems. Sam touched his cheek. Ah. That why he has a shorter lifespan, you think? Orbit nodded. Bet so. Sam leaned over his desk and started typing. Who does that leave us able to go? Is anyone able to survive that? There are a few I can think of, Orbit said. Sam looked up at him. Who? Frances Rockborn, curator if she wants to go, and maybe Novacore might work. Sam laughed. So, a super-modified Vat-born and 2 AI. Holy crap, the purists would love that shit. Going to meet the oldest race known, and we're going to have to send made men. I like it. The Habitus is in the hold, Doc. Would you like me to offer the Gree a retrofit package? Sam nodded. Yeah. I'll write up letters for the potentials. I like 'em. You want to ask your doppelganger if maybe he wants to go with also. They might know about the corrupted bits. Orbit shook his head. He's in isolation of his own free will. He isn't proud of being the probable cause of the Callistode catastrophe. He's in a bad way. Sam leaned back in his chair. I get that. I'll write him up a letter anyway. Orbit stood up. That second letter? Sam opened it. Oh, hell yeah. Jahadeen. Crap, he's been waiting? Orbit shrugged. Want me to tell him to head this way? Sam nodded. Yeah. I'll type these out while he's en route. Alerting him now. Thanks, Orbit. Sam continued lounging in his chair, feet now on the desk and a new warm cup of coffee in his hands. He sat staring across the desk at Jahadeen, the martial artist with the studio on the old trader ring, and a young Stygian named Dark Rings. So, your message said you have a business you want a loan for, right? Sam said, looking at the Stygian. The Stygian wiggled its eyes, looking at one human. Then the other, Jahadeen, motioned for the creature to focus on Sam. The Stygian shakily bobbed its head in a nod. Yes, I wanted to ask you for a loan. And why are you asking me and not the Webians at the bank? They do this every day. The Stygian looked back at Jahadeen. Jahadeen leaned in. Sam, my dojo, I just got paid off. It was an utter nightmare dealing with them. Greedy crooks, truly. I'm lucky I'm as frugal as I am, or I wouldn't have been able to make it. They kept raising the mortgage rates. I even ran it by the scribblers in my closet, and they agreed with me. They're shady and have tons of loopholes in their contracts. I didn't want that for Dark Rings. She's one of my best students. Sam looked over at the female Stygian. All right, make your pitch. Jahadeen touched her on one of her many long arms. You got this. Go on. She turned her eye stalks back toward Sam. Jahadeen has been very good teacher. He has taught me many things. Combat, calmness, sexual dampening. But what I... Sam interrupted. Sexual dampening? What? Darkrings looked back at Jahadeen. Sam, well, Felbians are well. How to say it? Jahadeen looked at his hands for a moment, smiling to himself. Well, they're horny fuckers. They're infertile most of the time, and both sexes have sporadic times of fertility. They're always on point in case the other happens to be fertile. They try. It's weird. I know, but hear her out. Sam looked back at the Stygian. All right. So he taught you to calm that down. What were you going to say? She bobbed her body, nodding. Yes, yes. I have learned calmness. He has also taught the importance of learning bodies and how they work. I have honed skill that is profitable. I would like to show you. Sam sat up straighter. All right. Let's see it. Darkring stood up and hopped onto the desk. Sam scooted a bit back. She motioned with her arms at the desk. You will need to be up here. Lie down, please. Sam looked at Jahadin. The man smiled back at him, motioning him to lay down and nodding. Sam stood up, looking slowly at the creature on his desk, and crawled onto the flat surface. Dark rings lifted up the back of his shirt, and Sam's eyes went wide. What is happening, Jahadin? Roll with it, Sam. You'll like it, trust me. Sam kept laying on his stomach, staring at Jahadin as the Felbian female placed her small hands on his back and started rubbing his muscles. Sam let out a low groan. She heard it, felt it, and could smell the chemicals released from tension relaxing. She adjusted her methodology and focused on tight bundles of muscle and flesh. Sam groaned again. Holy crap. I didn't know I even hurt there. Jahadin leaned in his chair. Good, right? Sam nodded slowly, a small pool of drool forming on the desk. Yes. This is amazing. I didn't know how bad I needed this. Well, relax and think about it. She needs a small loan to get a shop set up. I think she's going to be printing money with her skills. I'm in, Sam said. Dark Rings, I'll help you get your shop set up, but I get a discount. Sound good? Dark Rings adjusted her arms, pushing into Sam's ribs. You come by every 8th day. I will help your muscles. You will heal better. You give me loan, am I right? Sam looked over at Jahadin, his eyes drooping. Orbit, can you do a search and find us a good spot to set her up? Running search proxies now, Orbit said over the comm. Found a spot we can modify, Sam. It's near the primary ring, on the human spur. You own it. Rather than a loan, you can just rent the space. Sam raised a hand and spun his finger in the air. Run it. Make this happen. Dark Rings bounced on his back. Thank you very much, Sam. You are good. I am happy very much. Sam pointed at his back. Keep at it a bit more, please. She focused again and kept rubbing his back. Sam shut his eyes and eventually fell asleep. Dark Rings kept rubbing his back for several minutes before her, and Jahadin got up and exited the office. Sam slept for an hour before the coffee in his bladder woke him up.